uniting, not being afraid, and creating the change by educating our brothers and sisters in West Papua and Papua New Guinea and the Pacific regions. And we have put West Papua back on the world agenda, finding support from governments. If we have realized this in such a difficult situation, what can you imagine we can do in an independent country as the Netherlands? And that is what I'm reflecting to students, and it makes them think. Because I'm confident, if we can realize change there, we can do everything we dream here in the Netherlands by being a voice. We are that confident, brothers and sisters. We are that confident.
Thank you. Positive. Stay confident.
Brother Rocky. We're definitely we appreciate the information that you have been, and this is some very powerful information. And I'm Brother Eugene Talford. I am the chairman of the Afro Diaspora Political and Economic Think Tank, and we're an organization that was established 2 years ago through the years. Yes. And with that, we know with numbers, you're definitely going to have to make an economic movement because the Indonesians are moving in because of the resources. Yeah. And they feel that if they fled the country, then they could basically begin to maneuver the political exchange between those who are making the decisions at the top. And so my question is, with that, how many of Papua New Guinea's Black African people are a part of the political system? And it sounds like the country is being gentrified by the Indonesians. So basically that means that they move in and monopolize on the economic resources of a country. And some come in through organizations like the IMF and the World Bank and so forth to make change in certain countries where they would feel that it would be a asset to one's country. So Indonesia is there for a number of reasons, as well as their people. How do you see that the culture, Papua New Guinea's culture, ethnic culture, can make change in a system that's kind of already been in place for many years? If that's kind of clear what I'm asking, are there any people of Afro descent, Papua New Guinea's people in the political arena that make those decisions, make those decisions, and how are they held accountable for the decisions that are being made on behalf of the people themselves? Because the people is the government. You know, the people themselves are the government. Yes. So there's no Wizard of Oz, somebody standing in the back pulling strings. It's not a machine. So how is that being combated on the measures? I know economics is always the bottom line because your economics buy your political resources that are necessary to make major decisions. So how is that a balance for the people there?
Yeah, Brother Eugene, thank you for your input, and I hope I understand your question clearly. And please ask more questions if I'm not clear enough. But to mention I will start on the Papua New Guinea side, so the eastern part of the island of New Guinea, which is an independent state since 1975. So I answered previously on my sister's question. So what are they doing? So in the first place, the first governments in Papua New Guinea were actually handpicked by the Australian government who facilitated their independence. So it was not, the people were actually being fooled, kept stupid. There was not, until this day, there's not a good educational system. And the colonizers did that, with a certain, mind, so they can keep control of the political system, control the puppet government, so they can extract resources. So, and we've seen that with pain in my heart, from West Papua. So how can you left your brothers and sisters in the West, dying in front of their eyes, by this corporate greed and white governments, because they didn't control their country. So the people of Papua New Guinea didn't control because the governments were put there with fake elections with a few people who are all benefiting from the extraction of this corporate interest of Australia. So, but it is changing. What changed the last elections in Papua New Guinea, that we got now a well-elected prime minister, the first one who's a former tribe, a chief of tribe. And he is like having control. And his government is really against corruption, making sure that the corporations are paying their fair tax. And this is hope. This is really, a young democratic state. And we can see now, we were fighting, the Papua New Guineans were fighting against a system fully controlled by Australia, US, and other Western countries. But this has changed. So they give us hope now. And I hope this momentum will building up, and more Papua New Guineans will realize that their vote is really does matter if they want to take back control of their country and their resources. So that is hopeful, and that is the answer on Papua New Guinea. I hope that will be clear enough. If not, you can ask more. To look on the western half, so the West Papuan case, is that we were in the first place a former Dutch colony. So the Netherlands actually prepared the West Papuans to govern their own territory in the 60s, where they installed a first government, existence of indigenous West Papuans, including a lot of my uncles, and a first army, and a national anthem and a flag. But it stopped because Indonesia hijacked the geopolitical momentum between Russia and Australia and the US at the time, the Cold War, to take over the control of West Papua with this agreement. And with the military invasion in 1963, they take control of West Papua and everything and all the resources over there. And they took full political control. There was not an ethnic West Papuan who had anything to say about what happened there. So it was full Asian, Indonesian control of West Papua. And it actually didn't change until this day. What happened is they give the West Papuans a kind of autonomy that we can decide, about our political, but, it's on paper. The reality in West Papua is they put, all Indonesian, ministries of ministers control of West Papua, which they separated in two provinces, West Papua and Papua. So they make it provinces, and they install a kind of governors on the territory. And nowadays you see West Papuans on that positions. But these are not West Papuans who love, their people. These are West Papuans who love money. So they put puppet West Papuans there to say, look, we have, indigenous West Papuans who have control of the resource. And if things go wrong, they say, yeah, it's Papuans, they're corrupt, we can do anything. So they set up, a misleading system to still control everything which is happening in West Papua. And that is exactly what is happening now. So we're now... Yeah, go ahead.
How united are you guys at the moment? I mean, you say that there's some major changes that are taking place, and based on what's been going on here in the United States, I'm pretty sure you see us African Americans here begin to organize in various ways to bring about change. And some of that change that is on the table right now has to do with our economic well-being, preparing to put legislation in place to get reparations. So I feel based on what you are saying, you all may be qualified to go to United Nations or any other institutions, Supreme Court that can hear you out to be able to obtain reparations for some of the things, unjust causes that you've been going through.
Yeah, so that's a really tough question, which I'm going to try to answer. And yes, we are now unified under the name the United Liberation Movement for West Papua, and it will be. You can read the website, which is www.ulmwp.org, and it has been facilitated by the small island state of Vanuatu in the beginning of 2015 for the first time. That West Papuans, the biggest independence movement in West Papua, united in one wing. And since that moment, we could say that this liberation movement speaks on behalf of the entire nation, and that is exactly what happened. And since that moment, because what Indonesia did from the start is divide among this freedom movement. They stoke, they provoke, so that we will fight, among each other, and there will be not a unification. So there will be without unity, we can't create change. And they succeeded actually. until we find this way, facilitated by the small island nation of Vanuatu in the Pacific region, and realizing the United Liberation Movement was Papua 5 years ago. And since that moment, we got the opportunity of the Vanuatu government to join them in the diplomatic missions, to use the diplomatic missions to lobby with different government and heads of state. And that is exactly since that moment, so the last 5 years, which I mentioned before, we have created so much change. And we did it via the Free West Papua campaign, which is my part. We created awareness, because when people doesn't know about West Papuans, they can't care about it. So the first thing we have to do is break the silence. People must know what West Papua is and what is happening there. And if they know it is wrong, and they will support it. So the first challenge is to break the silence, and that's what we did with the campaign. And then our lobby can start. So the politicians can do their work to lobby with governments and politicians all across the world to highlight the unfinished decolonizations and the wrongdoings of this fake referendum. And that is what actually started the last 5 years. With the United Liberation Movement, we got 79 countries within the African Caribbean state parties last December unanimously support a fact-finding mission, human rights fact-finding mission to West Papua this year. This is historically. But of course, the Western countries are silent. They are still hoping that countries won't talk about, put this on the agenda at the UN level, and their medias are trying to still keep this on a low level, because we're going to expose an international fraud on an international way. They are all involved, and all the corporations are committed to ecocide and genocide. And that is exactly our agenda, to expose and bring down their credibility. And therefore, we need every citizen, whether they live in the Netherlands or London or the US, or especially in the African region, to raise awareness, asking their governments, especially as Black nation states, to do the right thing, which is stopping the colonization and exploitation of white governments and corporations of the resources and people in West Papua. And that is our agenda. We are really optimistic with the change we've realized in the last 5 years. Without freedom, once again, with very little resources, in an oppressed area, we are capable of organizing ourselves and create a change that they do not want to see.
Well, many of the African countries on the continent of Africa is pretty much going through the same thing right now.
Yeah.
And so I do know over the last 5 years that Mother Africa the children of the Afro diaspora have been working to link ourselves with Mother Africa as a sort of a reconnection to where our spiritual ancestors have come from.
Yes.
And with that all being said, there are many benefits to come from that, especially when it gets to the having an alliance with one another, wherever Africans may be in the world, but also uniting on a united African front, where we can begin to bring in new breed leadership that could go about making these changes. One thing I tell a lot of people is that we are not our parents. We're at the age now, our parents went through their struggle, but now we're in the seat where our parents were, some 20 years ago. And for us to be a new breed leader generation, I feel that we have more of a say-so of how we feel that things need to be ran in our 21st century lifetime. And I say this because many of us have gone to school with the Europeans, the Western world. We've been integrated, whereas in the past, less than 60, 70 years ago, our parents wasn't as integrated in an integrated society. So I say this, that we should be able to now, in a 21st century, African people should be able to step to whoever it is or whoever it may be that we feel that are stifling our way of life to move up in life. And so I say, as we unite together, we definitely want to bring Papua New Guinea in as a part, Papua New Guinea in as a part of the Afro-Diaspora Connection. So we welcome you, brother, to relay any media information that you want to broadcast to get more word out about what's happening with the gentrification system taking place in Papua New Guinea.
Yeah, thank
Wow.
you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Do you speak any West Papua language?
Sorry, say again,
Do you
brother.
speak
I
any
missed that
of
one.
local language in West Papua?
Yeah, and just a few words. My parents, we have like in West Papua, just the western half, we got more than 250 different tribe languages. And this is not, I'm not talking about accents, I'm talking about tribe languages. And in Papua New Guinea, we got more than 750 different tribe languages. But, unfortunately, my mother didn't learn me the tribe language where my roots are. So unfortunately, I cannot talk my tribe languages just besides songs, which I've learned, and that's the only thing I can do: singing languages, songs in the languages of my mom and dad.
Okay, good. Yeah. By the way, people who do not know Papua, it means not united. I don't remember which language was that, but Papua means not united in one of those tribal languages there. The area is so rich in languages and culture and traditional. I will suggest each one of us to actually do some research so we can have some clue where we are talking about. Those who are live on YouTube, they can see I have put videos on YouTube on our videos, so there's the pictures as well. But I can't put them on WhatsApp. But yeah, so we should try to Google and find out what is really West Papua and how it happened to be. So we know in a sense what we talk about. Now let's go back to your freedom, your liberation or your freedom, your war against the Indonesian government. Are you guys doing peaceful liberation, or you are doing war liberation?
Yeah, that's a good question. So since Indonesia faked the referendum in 1969, immediately a resistance movement was there in West Papua, and the former military soldiers who were established by the Dutch government in the first place, the Papuan Voluntary Corps, they picked the guns and they said they want to, fight back to take back control of the country. And in 1971, the organization Free West Papua, OPM, was launched on July 1, 1971. And since that moment, we got a guerrilla movement in the jungles of West Papua who were fighting for the independence. But we didn't have a real counterweight against the big country Indonesia, who was supported by the Australian and the United States Armed Forces, and who got a lot of wield and armor. So we couldn't. It was a war we never could win. But from that moment, we still got a guerrilla movement, which is the fundament of our revolution today, and they're still there, the first generation freedom fighters. But what happened, because Indonesia, of course, are always trying to conquer and divide the movement. So that's what they tried to do, setting freedom fighters, guerrilla movement, fighting each other in villages against villages. But what we have done now is we have go from a war to a peaceful movement of students and academics who educating West Papuans to unite in a different way by just telling and educating people in the region and the world about the unfinished decolonization. So that is actually what the status is of our freedom struggle, is a peaceful campaign to bring West Papua back on the UN decolonization table and UN agenda. And we are doing that on peaceful means, but we have military guerrilla movements in the jungles of West Papua who are the fundament of our revolution.
My brother, since, according to Brother Yohani, the name Papua means not united.
Mhm. Mhm.
What will be the name of West Papua when it has become liberated?
That I think the leaders at that time have to decide and how they want to do that. With consultation of the people, that moment will come. That we're gonna rewrite our name and whatever is part of a liberated nation. Of course, we're gonna get rid of all colonial aspects of names and whatever you can think about. But the last thing we want to do is to confuse everything what was built since that moment, because that name and what is a colonial name, I agree with that, but it is something which unifying the people right now, and that is important. Under this name, with a clear vision, which is liberate that territory, that country, uniting the people with one flag and one spirit. And after that is realized, we can rewrite the.
This past week, I believe, this week actually, they all decided to call the United Nations Human Rights Council.
I can't hear you anymore.
You can hear me?
African communities to rise up against oppression in their vicinities. So, is there or has there been an uprising to ride the wave, so to speak, in West Papua, to take advantage of this worldwide movement?
Anybody on the floor have any questions?
Have the revolutionary groups in West Papua connected with other groups around the world who are also organizing against these oppressive forces?
Well, this is really amazing input and question. And what is happening? Yeah.
Right, hold on a second. I don't want to be.
Yeah.
I don't mean to cut you off. Brothers and sisters, if you can put your if you're not speaking, please put your microphones on mute. That way, and Brother Rocky, very clearly. I certainly appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Eugene. All right. So yeah. To come back at my brother's question, yes. So what is actually happening in Indonesia now, which is really, this Black Lives Matters movement all across the world, which is hitting the Netherlands as well, which I'm joining, the thousands of them in the Netherlands writing history. So this wave is hitting West Papua as well. What started after the Black Lives Matter hashtag is that Indonesian citizens created the hashtag Papuan Lives Matter. And this is really a turning point in the struggle since the last Olympics. The momentum was already there that we saw Indonesian students raising awareness, highlighting the injustice and the racial abuses by the governments against indigenous West Papuans. And this just sparks social media across Indonesia, bringing headlines in the New York Times and in the Netherlands as well. So yes, we are joining this wave. And but I want to come back at barbars than slaves at that time. And after seeing the documentary 13th on Netflix, it is and it's the same what we see in Africa. It's not a coincidence. It's the same masterminded countries, this white supremacist system controlled by IMF, World Banks, and the worldwide leaders who keep one of the the richest continent poor, the people fighting among each other, so they can help them with development, but still keeping under control, which is not different in West Papua. So what I want to say with it is this Black Lives Matter movement must realize this is bigger than that movement. It's about unfinished decolonization and slavery, educated and rooted in their systems of education, of IMF, of financial system. And this is what I'm educating people in the Netherlands at universities. When we are talking about climate change, from my point of view as indigenous West Papuans, it's about colonization, about capitalism and racism against indigenous people of West Papua or the people in the Amazon or in Africa. And what I'm seeing here is that, they want to make us not confident about who we are, taking our identity, keeping us poor. And this is what we have to break down, educating our brothers and sisters all across the world about who we are as African people, decent, all across the world, because it's their system, masterminded, to keep us stupid, not educated, unconfident, to keep controlling and taking our resources, and injustice in every system we live in their countries. So this Black Lives Matter movement make me and make our movement even stronger, because we're exposing this racist institutional system from the Indonesians, but it's the same in the US, it's the same in the Netherlands and Belgium. And that is what we have to educate ourselves to join alliances with these different movements. Imagine that the Black Lives Matter movement highlight the injustice of the indigenous West Papuans. That is exactly what this corporate interest and this government don't want. So that is what we have to do. And that is what we have invested in with all these kinds of, global Pan-Africanism network, collaborating with our brothers and sisters, because that is what they don't want to do. Unite, take back control of our countries, and do the right thing for our people and our country. And that is exactly what we are doing right now, and which gives me a lot of optimism and perspective for our people, and I hope for my brothers and sisters as well.
I totally agree with you, Brother Rocky. That's one of the things that we had discussed last year at the African Union headquarters. Last October, a group of activists, along with some of our brothers and sisters from the continent, pretty much all over the world, had come together last October, and we hosted this meeting to kind of discuss a little bit about what was going on with African people worldwide, but also coming together to see what type of solutions that we can come up with to kind of bypass any of the destruction that have been geared towards the systematic destruction that have been put in place for us. So I say, again, we are a new great leader generation, and we can take control of pretty much any and everything that we feel necessary today has to be done by force. And I say this because we've been working to unite brothers and sisters throughout the Afro diaspora. What can we do here in the Afro diaspora to help push the movement for our brothers and sisters there in Papa?
Well, thank you, Eugene. I think, every opportunity to put West Papua in contact with your national representative, congressmen or congresswomen, would be one of the main agendas, to keep the ball on the highest level, so they can, talk about, ask questions in the higher levels of power. That is what we are doing here, for example, in the Dutch government, parliament here in the Netherlands, and all parts of the Pacific region as well. But besides that is by collaborating with movements, for example, like this huge momentum of Black Lives Matter. We must connect and emphasize the problems which Black people in, for example, West Papua, but in Africa is actually the same. it's institutional, ignorance of these white states by keeping countries and people poor, extracting their resources. This is institutional problem organized on international level by international institutions, IMF, World Banks, and we should put this on the agenda. So we must create a narrative about what is happening in the US. It's more than that. And that is, we must not keep it by, police violence. It's bigger than that. It is like the ignorance of the entire West about this institutional racism against black people. So it's about the root causes. It's about colonial institutes, which killing 1/3 of my people the last 50 years, and still my brothers and sisters in the US don't know about that. And that is something we have to educate, empower ourselves with this perspective we have. Because I have a lot of experience in the last 10 years, which I want to share with the heads of, or with the coordinators of the Black Lives Matter movement, that we can make each other even more stronger. And that is something, so I don't know how big your network is, but it is bringing this perspective together with a kind of Zoom call like this, sharing our thoughts, our experiences, and thinking about how can we use the momentum to make it bigger, to educate ourselves, to defeat this corporate greed, this mainstream media, which is ignoring our perspective about, the past, about institutions, about the climate change, which is all about racism.
Okay, yeah. So back to the same question he just asked. Do you guys have a representative or some people in Washington, D.C.?
Yes, we have a group in Washington, D.C. who is operating on behalf of the United Liberation Movement for West Papua.
Okay, good. So I think my computer was frozen. I was asking you, what are you doing to address this issue to specifically African nations, especially African Union, and see if they can do anything about it?
Yes, so last year we got this historic resolution signed in Kenya by the 79 heads of states of the African, Caribbean, and Pacific countries. And this resolution is what we are trying to boost on every international level. So we are encouraging our brothers and sisters in whatever country they live to campaign and lobby at the government levels and the parliament to make sure that the politicians will take this resolution to a higher level, so the African countries will bring this resolution to the Europe, and to make sure that they will support the West Papuan case towards a decolonization table of the UN. Is that a clear answer on your question?
Yes, indeed. I'm just trying to make sure that African nations are aware of what is going on in West Guinea or Papua.
Yes, so to add something more is, what they don't want, and with they I mean, the Western governments and those who are in the G7, the G20, whatever. They don't want, of course, that the African heads of state talk about the brothers and sisters in West Papua. So that is what I'm hoping, that the new generation, as Brother Eugene said, so we have to be, confident, and we have to transform these political elites who are actually doing the same thing the colonizers did with their country, keeping the people poor. We have to be united, and my hope is on, they've signed this resolution, but we need more will to make sure that the African countries work strongly together, highlighting every black nation to be decolonized and take control of their resources. This is a big agenda, and we need every African brothers and sisters to educate themselves and to work together and lobby on every level which is in the power.
Because one of the things that we found that has been the problem in the past is that we've been asking too much instead of making and taking control of the situation. And for so long, we see throughout our history that based on what our ancestors have gone through, they've been asking, and they've been nice, and they've been patient. But at the same time, too, they were not educated in a lot of the things that it takes to make things happen in today's society. So, definitely we're on the right track. And with making moves of leveling up We're
Yeah.
uniting with African people who are ready to level up.
Yeah.
And we definitely want to unite with the brothers and sisters in Papa. We are affiliated with many of the African governments where we can begin to put together trade agreements with the brothers and
Yeah.
sisters that are on the ground, buying black,
Yeah.
developing black business, and also engaging our brothers and sisters on a level to where we can kind of engage in job creation and building a nation for ourselves. And with that, we definitely want Papa to be a part of that, this new breed leadership, for sure. Brother, we definitely commend you for what you're doing, because it takes strong people these days to really stand up and to speak straightforward without having to water the situation down. I think many of our brothers and sisters, they've been hoping that white Caucasian, white people understand and are asking them, please understand us. And we're a generation where we're not asking for you to understand us. We are a generation that's telling you what's going to be taking place now, and this is how it's going to be from here out. So
Absolutely.
Let us know what we can do for you, brother, whether it's monetary or whether it's the voices that you need, or boots on the ground to make things happen for you there to bring about change. And thank you, brother, for being here for us to enlighten us.
Thank you, Brother Eugene. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
That's what's up. So pretty much, how can we help you?
Well, I think, yeah, so like Brother Eugene said, indeed, our lobby costs money. So to travel around the world for the members of the United Liberation Movement for West Papua, it would be helpful if African states would sponsor the lobby and support via their diplomatic opportunities. And that's one thing. So the main goal is that the governments will support the United Liberation Movement, support the resolution, and level this up to the UN level. And that's one thing. That's the main goal, to create change. And besides that, we need our brothers and sisters to just be a voice and educating from their level of power around them, and we know that will be the change from bottom up.
Is there a Free West Papua fund?
No, it's just like gifts from people. We got on a website, we ask people to donate money, and that is basically, the money we use to buy campaign materials, to travel, but that's just is, the thing I'm doing now, being a spokesperson, is a part-time thing beside a full-time job in the Netherlands, so I can pay my bills to live. So this is something, struggling. They keep us struggling, because if there was a government who facilitated us, I could do this full-timely. And it's the same for all the volunteers in our campaign and also in the United Liberation Movement, because it's a lack of money. And what we are hoping is that our black countries, the governments, will be the first one. These white governments are laughing at us because they said, look, these African states don't look at the brothers and sisters, so why should we? So our first hope is that the African countries, the governments, will do the moral responsibility and take care of the family. But after that, we have to take care of ourselves. So we do this part-timely and live on donations of people who are willing to support our case. That is the status right now.
Good, thank you so much. So we will need to talk to people on ground in West Papua. How that can be? Do you have people there like?
Absolutely, we got in the right range of activists to the representatives of the United Liberation Movement, to church leaders. We got all kinds of men and women who are willing to speak, to be in contact.
Okay, so what language do you guys speak in Northland? Is that like French and some Dutch or what?
Say again, brother?
What language do you speak in Dutch in Northland?
In the Netherlands?
Yeah.
I speak Dutch here mainly.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, he was asking what's the national language in Papua?
Oh, yeah, sorry. So
It's
after
Swahili.
Indonesia,
It's
yeah.
gonna be
So
Swahili.
sorry, yeah, that should be it, right? It should be a mother language actually, as the African descent. But after Indonesia invaded West Papua, they made one language for all the people in West Papua, which is the national language, which is Indonesia, Bahasa Melayu, they said. So we all communicate in Bahasa, but we got the different tribes got, the elderly still got the indigenous languages are still there.
Yeah, we are coming in Swahili, okay?
Yes, for sure.
Yeah,
So I have a question, Jerome
yeah,
here.
go ahead.
So I just looked up Papua New Guinea here on the internet on
Yes.
it says here the word Papua is derived from an old local term of uncertain origins. You think it's possible? It's just it think it's possible it means something else besides it probably doesn't really mean not united, but maybe that's a more modern meaning because of the situation, or maybe it may have an older meaning that maybe some of the tribes may know it. I just looked that up. What do you think?
Jack, thank you, Brother Jerome. Yeah. I haven't actually dig onto the real meaning of the language, which makes me very curious now, to find out and hear stories of our late about uncles, what they can tell about that, which is really interesting. So I'm gonna dig into that. Thank you.
Yeah, look into that. Yeah. So another question. So who is the prime minister or president of Papua New Guinea now, and what side is he on? Like, is he helping, or him or her?
Of Papua New Guinea, the prime minister of the Papua New Guinea.
Yeah.
I forgot his. It's
Google real quick. There was someone named James
Marape. Yes, James Marape. Yes. That's the prime. He's now the prime minister, and he's. If you look at pictures of him, he loved to wear. In his previous role, he was a chief of a tribe over there, and so he's. So he really is like the hope of our our campaign and our liberation movement, and he's really in good contact with the chairman of our United Liberation Movement, Mr. Benny Wenda. So we have very good contacts, and behind the scenes we are working together with his cabinet. And since he got power, he makes sure that he didn't disturb the support of this 79 African, Caribbean, and Pacific State Park. We got support from the last December when the resolution was adopted unanimously to get a UN fact-finding. So since he was installed, we saw this shift in attitude towards our independence movement, because the previous governments actually were puppets of Indonesia and Australia, and they actually blocked every support we were trying to find. And that is the optimism we see in Papua New Guinea now. We got our brothers and sisters in Papua New Guinea who are getting well educated and grassroots level, making sure that the government is not looking away again from what is happening to the brothers and sisters in West Papua. So that is the turning point, actually, if I can say that this way, in our trust and confidence to this newly elected prime minister.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, and people from Papua New Guinea consider themselves African or from Africa, or is it like a distant migration, or is it Micronesian or Melanesian? The language is different.
The first thing they are feel related to, as far as I know, is the Melanesian and Pacific region. But now we have, with these activists, we see now, we got one motto: no matter where a black man is coming from, black man or woman is coming from his ancestors in Africa. So this is something we feel strongly connected. If I talk to fellow activists and brothers in Papua New Guinea. So I think this is the mindset in the entire island of New Guinea.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I'm looking at pictures of some people from Papua New Guinea and other nearby regions, and they look surprisingly like some West Africans, some Central Africans. And
Absolutely.
sometimes I see pictures of Australasians, like the original Australians, and they look
Yeah.
darker, but they kind of have different from, the hair is like more curlier,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
the darker skin, but the different features are different. I look at people's features,
Right. Aborigine,
Yeah.
very Aborigine orientation. But we also see that the island itself, when you look at Papua New Guinea and then you look at the west coast of Africa, very similar. When you have Guinea-Bissau, and then having Papua and Papua New Guinea kind of linked to, there could be a possibility that during colonial times that many of the folks may have been indigenous of those regions were transported during the slave period. So, but I think that's something we have to dig a little bit deeper into history to see exactly how that come into play. But much of it had to do with the migration of African people, and African people had already traveled pretty much all the way around the world. History has shown us that, and archaeological evidence have shown that as well, especially in the Mexican region way before, but during the Mayan Empire. So, for sure. But I know that Papua New Guinea share very similar political atmosphere of what Hawaii did. The Hawaiians had gone through with the American Empire invading, some years ago. So can you tell us your experience with relating to some of the other islands who have experienced pretty much what you've gone through as well? Do you guys have an alliance with other brothers and sisters in other territories that have indigenous African people living?
Yeah, I think all across the Pacific region, these were islands who were colonized by, the French, the Portuguese, the Spaniards, and if you go more to the east, you mentioned Hawaii, indeed, by the US. So yeah, we got a lot of support from previous colonized islands, for example, Solomon Islands and Vanuatu. The reason the small island state of Vanuatu is supporting us is when they got independence from the British and the French. They said, the first prime minister said, as long as there are Melanesian countries are still occupied, our country is not independent yet. And that is why the island state of Vanuatu is so committed to our cause. And that is the spirit we feel now all across the Pacific region. This, colonial trauma is our element to find support in the Pacific region. That is exactly what is happening all across the Pacific regions, from New Caledonia, which is still a colony of France, and having a referendum lost it last year because the majority of French people didn't vote for independence. So the sentiment is still there. And what you see in Hawaii as well, we see the Hawaii Liberation Movement, we have contacts with them. So we are searching, support from and solidarity among nations and peoples who are still being colonized by other countries. So I think that the spirit in the Pacific is really alive right now. And what we have done in the Pacific civil society movement, pushing the government to support West Papua, is the change and turning point 5 years ago, which I mentioned before. And that is exactly what we are trying to reach in Africa and other parts of the world, to make sure alliances with other movements and other liberation movements to be a stronger voice and support all across the world. And that is exactly what we are right in today, and why we are so optimistic, because change is following, every day, more awareness, more support. So we are really optimistic, and the only thing we have to do is educate the world about what is happening there, and showing them the opportunities, and sharing experiences, what we have done the last 5 years, to making them even stronger again. And that is, an exchange of power and knowledge. And that is really, that's magic. It's magic.
Mm-hmm. Brother Rocky, tell us a little bit about we're going to get off a little bit off the political side of everything, but can you tell us a little bit about the atmosphere of Papua?
Your voice. Your voice is. I can't. It's like narrowing down. Can you?
Okay, I'm sorry about that. Is that a little bit better?
No. Am I just hearing Eugene's voice a little bit weird, or are you? Everyone else is hearing Eugene very good?
Okay. How's that?
Yeah,
Is that a little bit better?
Eugene's your volume went down. It's almost like your phone switched from being clear, and then then you sound like you're in a far microphone.
Yeah.
That's what you sound like you're in a walkie-talkie.
Okay, how's
So
that? Is that a
something
little
like-
bit better?
No, it's not fixed yet. Same way.
No.
Something with your volume.
Can you try again, Eugene?
It looks like something now, right? I don't know what is going on, but we can hear him.
Okay, how's that? Is that a little bit better?
He's
Still the same.
No, it's still sounding like you're far away. Yeah.
Okay, well let me say this. Say if I know one of the things that we can bridge the gap is having people from the diaspora travel to Papa. Can you tell us a little bit about the culture and a little bit about the food and the people? I think that definitely helps when you get more people to travel to the region of Afro descent. Can you tell the Afro diaspora a little bit about just going there to live, work, and play amongst the indigenous culture?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Bert. So if I picked it up clearly, you want to know what kind of food, what if you land there, what kind of circumstances you will find there. So you won't find a city like New York or The Hague in West Papua. It's been left behind by the colonizers. So it's you don't got a lot of infrastructure. You will find, but you got an airport and you got roads and you got some buildings, and the West Papuan mothers usually sell their food on markets. So the shops are owned by migrants, usually by Indonesians or Chinese, and the West Papuans are left behind. That is the infrastructure you will find. And if you look on the streets, you will see a mixed variety of people, especially if you arrive by the airport. You will see indigenous West Papuans, and you will see, in Asians, Indonesians, Japanese, and Chinese lookalike people who are clearly different than the ethnic West Papuans who left behind. You can see the clothes are like poor people. They're not all of them are, having good jobs because the shops are owned by migrants of Indonesia. But what they eat there are, the West Papuans usually eat indigenous foods such as sweet potatoes, fish, pork, which they've hunted in the jungle. I think that's the general line I can share. Yeah, is that clear enough, or do you want to know more specific on a specific theme?
Yeah, that's clear enough. I just want to give our listeners and audience a little feel, maybe looking at visiting Papa to get a real feel, because I know when we here in the West can travel to places like that, our dollars stretch very far. And of course, by giving American money to regions such as Papa, it would definitely help the indigenous culture build a level up to and being able to compete in a region where you're getting folks from Indonesia and Taiwan and places like that, Japan, where they come in very rich and wealthy nations. So yeah, that's exactly what we want the Afro diaspora to be able to get a feel about the culture and to be able to go there to pay education, is visit and to get knowledge and exchange knowledge with our brothers and sisters on the ground.
Thank you. A thing I want to add, Eugene, and for my brothers and sisters, is that if you go to West Papua, you should be very careful, because it's, I think, one of the most militarized zone in the world. You got checkpoints. If you go from one city to another, you have to have a license from the military, and you have to explain, especially as foreigner. They want to know, and you probably will be followed by Indonesian military intelligence officers, police, or citizens. They have paid to follow foreigners, because there's, as I mentioned before, Indonesia banned all foreign media. So if you will go in there with cameras, you will have all eyes on you. That is something I want to specifically mention for those who want to go there. Go as tourists, as bird watcher, low profile, because they are afraid that the story of West Papua will go out of West Papua and that the world will know what Indonesia is doing there. So that is, just the context information about the circumstances is very tight.
Thank you. I was watching on YouTube.
Yes.
Actually. I'm working on a lot of things around here. Now I think we are finishing up. Let me see if we can finishing up. First of all, let me take this moment to appreciate for you to come in on our show. We do this to just make sure that we know who is who and who is doing what. In case someone may need assistance, they know who to talk to. So I do really appreciate for you to take this moment and inform us about West Papua and in general, actually, not only West Papua, even Papua and New Papua as well, because it's all one thing before these Caucasians or Europeans came and disrupt everything there. Now, finally, I want to take this moment to actually give the Swahili lesson for the school for today. If we do this, we try to learn every day one word in Swahili. So we go with it. You guys, you ready?
Yes.
Yeah. Today we're gonna talk about a common word. I'm even gonna type this in our chart. We're gonna talk about one word is called. A lot of people knows about it. It's called Rafiki. So who knows what is Rafiki mean?
No, sorry.
Say that again, Brother Marty. We didn't hear you. Can you say it a little bit louder?
Which word? What does Rafiki means? You never hear about Rafiki?
No, sorry.
No, brother. Go on and school us. Go on and school us.
Hey, Jerome, you never hear about Rafiki? Mundit, Rafiki.
Only in The Lion King.
So what does that mean, Rafiki then? Rafiki.
Been a while since I've seen The Lion King.
Eh?
Been a while since I've seen The Lion
Rafiki,
King.
it means friend.
Okay.
Yeah, Rafiki, it means friend. So, Rafiki, yeah, Rafiki means
Let's
friend.
Google that. Okay.
I will remember that for now. Rafiki means friend. Thank you.
Yes,
And
that's
urafiki with the u add on it or you add on it. I'm
Yeah.
putting in the text in the chart. Urafiki, it means friendship.
Nice.
So
Urafiki.
Rafiki, if you watch Lion King, you see Rafiki, it means my friend. So Urafiki is friendship, okay? And
Amazing. Thank you.
yeah, so that's the word for today, Swahili word. And you guys, you know more about on your own. So Raki, you know that we are coming in a Papua with Swahili, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, that's our African, how do you call it? African working or national or common language. So that's what we're trying to bring up. All our black people, anywhere we are, we can communicate ourselves without using colonial languages.
Right, working towards a common African language that all people throughout the diaspora and on the continent can utilize, a language of our own outside the colonial powers languages.
Absolutely for it. Yes, absolutely gonna be part of our educational system.
All right. So if there's no any question, we wanna end for this moment. Again, me personally and our team, we do appreciate for you to come in. We will need in future to bring in someone from from on ground, so we can talk to them and ask them. I thought you guys were seeing me. Sorry. Yeah, so in future we'll bring someone in who is on ground, so we can talk to them and ask them what's up, what's going on in West Papua. But also we want to get connected with the team in Washington DC, especially that's where I am. So we can ask them and interview them in person and see how we can assist them. But also I want you to call me because there's some things I want to hook you up, okay?
Perfect, brother. Yes, absolutely.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, I do appreciate for everyone. I don't know if there's anyone who has something, a comment or something to say. Final?
Yeah, I just wanted to end it with this. Brother Rocky, tell the audience and our listeners how they can get in touch with you. And again, just reiterate your website and how we can get involved with the movement there in Papua New Guinea to join forces.
Yes, Brother Eugene. So thank you, brothers and sisters, for giving me the opportunity in the first place. Really thankful. And if you want to be a voice to help your brothers and sisters in West Papua, you can follow our campaign websites, which is www.freewestpapua.org. You can find all recent information and updates and news about them. And if you want to follow the lobby work of our politicians and representatives, we have the website www.ulmwp.org, and you can see the historic resolution there and show your support the way you want to do. So once again, thank you very much for listening to my story on behalf of my people, where we can work together to end this colonial system which we are
right on, my brother. May our ancestors be with you throughout these challenging times. Peace and blessings to you and your family.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming. We appreciate the story. Very inspiring. So we appreciate you coming to and sharing your story with us.
Thank you very much, sister.
We're definitely praying for you and for the rest of the over there. So we all have to come together. We are one people. So if one person is suffering, another part of the world is all of us suffering.
Yes,
so
ma'am.
You and our praying and everybody in your country. So we appreciate you coming.
Thank you so much, madam. Amen. Amen.
Right.
Thank you.
All right. Have a good night, Rafi.
Ready?
Rafi.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Okay.
Good night. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye. Good night.
Kama kweli mko fiti, Kampala mambo vipi? Nairobi mambo vipi? Ukisikia muziki mnabudi kusheki, mubugi mudensi, mushe kulogelo kama snake. Play that mambo vipi? Sinza star mambo vipi? Haina haja kushangaa, kula kitu kisha tambaa, mamwela metagaa kila kona ya mtaa. Unakwisha ukizubaa, Bela mambo vipi? Machizo kwa jela ni vipi? Hata huku raia kuna watu wanakosea, sema vyao vyao tu bado ndo tunavyotetea. Wale tuishie hapa. Nauliza vipi mambo? Masera vipi mambo? Kama vipi tuonane wene itipaki alafu bezos tukane American chips. Watu wangu wa Kigamboni mambo vipi? Watu wangu wa Magogoni mambo vipi? Unakuja nishakodisha pantoni tuenda kujirusha huko kwenu. Watu wangu wa Mwenge mambo vipi? Watu wangu wa Temeke mambo vipi? Msipoteke na wala usiku msiweke, muda umekwenda zimebaki siku chache. Watu wangu wa Ilala mambo vipi? Watu wangu wa Tabata mambo vipi? Pepe mchizi wa Msibad niko fiti na bad na komana muziki. Uliza vipi mambo? Masera vipi mambo?